Well, hello there. So, the last time I did a video, I actually had done it with my phone originally, and I had some issues. So, I ended up doing it in three parts. So, to try to save from having that same problem again, I'm gonna do it all on the laptop this time. And I switched back to Windows from Linux, so the program I'm using now doesn't have the black and white filter. This is kind of a test run, just see how it does. But I decided that I'm gonna start, instead of just doing wrestling reviews on like matches and shows, I think I'll also give some of my thoughts about different things. And one that came to mind recently was the thought occurred to me that in some ways WWE today is doing what WCW did 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. They are constantly snatching up top talents from rival promotions. But I think the difference is that WWE realizes the mistake that WCW made and the mistake that they made too. See, in WCW, the Monday Night War era, WCW snatched up talent left and right as fast as they could get it. And a mistake that they made is, number one, they went after the big names that WWE had that were established. Well, the problem at the time was that a lot of those faces were well established, so they had become kind of egomaniacs and felt like they could run the place themselves. So in a way, WWE was smart. They let WCW buy up all these people like Hogan and get Flair back and Bobby Heenan and Rick Rude and Lex Luger and Macho Man and Dusty Rhodes and even like Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. These were people who pretty much wanted to run the show themselves. So it was like, haha, now they're your problem. And of course, that's a big part of what led to WCW's eventual demise, is they come in letting these people do what they wanted, having creative control and whatnot. But having said that, WWE kind of flipped the script on them a few years later. You get into 97, 98, 99, the Attitude Era. WWE started snatching up talent from WCW, but they went for the mid card, like the cruiserweights and whatnot. And those talents that were underutilized suddenly become some of the top stars in WWE. And they did the same thing with ECW. But the problem is that eventually they ran WCW and ECW out of business. So they no longer had those talent pools of rival promotions to draw from. And the WWE product was oversaturated. There was too much talent, not enough TV time. They tried like the invasion angle and whatnot. That didn't work. They got through that. Jeff Jarrett decided, well, WWE can't be the only show in town. So him and Dixie Carter got together. I don't know the exact story, so don't quote me on being an expert. But I know Jeff Jarrett had a major hand in it. Dixie Carter was basically the money. They put together TNA. It kind of started out like Ring of Honor at first, and then it grew, and it became their chief rival. Well, they kind of started doing the same thing. If you think about it, you get into like 06, 07, 08, 09. They tried to pluck talent from TNA. TNA tried to pluck, well, didn't try. Like, they both did. I'm sorry. WWE plucked some talent from TNA. TNA plucked some big name talent from WWE. Kurt Angle being a major one. Had Mick Foley there at one point, Ric Flair, like the list goes on. So I kind of consider that to be the TNA years. Well, a big problem is, once again, WWE almost run TNA out of business more than once. Somehow, TNA has stayed afloat all these years, but for the most part, they've had some really low points, and it's mostly because WWE was fighting an unofficial war with them all along. And it's one of the things is to this day, they won't even mention TNA like it even exists. They never talk about them. Like when AJ Styles come in, no reference. Only thing they ever talk about is his experience in Japan and the Indies. That's all they'll say. But if they bring a guy in from Ring of Honor, they'll talk about Ring of Honor. And they'll talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling specifically. Which is the thought that occurred to me, is that in this decade, they have pretty much, in each case, they're kind of using other promotions as a developmental territory. Because, okay, they have the whole NXT system now, and the Performance Center, and you get guys like American Alpha, Jason Jordan, and Chad Gable. These are guys that are young as hell, who had almost no wrestling experience outside of college. They were plucked up early by WWE. And they've basically been shaped and molded into exactly what WWE wants. And that's great that they can do that. Even if you bring somebody in who's been around for a long time, like AJ Styles or Samoa Joe or whatever, you can still put them through the NXT system to acclimate them to the WWE environment and product and the way of doing things. But if your only talent pool that you draw from is your own system, the product's going to get stale and boring, because everybody is going to have basically been taught by the same people, going to learn the same types of moves and how to work and etc., and it's going to get boring. So having the ability to draw from outside promotions that do things differently, like Ring of Honor and New Japan, is great. It complements their ability to develop and acquire new talents that are going to continue to carry the company into the future. And basically, like, what I'm getting at is that I think they realized their mistakes in the past. They run WCW and ECW out of business. They damn near run TNA out of business to where they're pretty much a joke at this point. They bought out Ohio Valley Wrestling, and I know at one point they were using, like, I forget the name, but I think it was Tennessee, but it was like Mid-South Wrestling or something. And they had Florida Championship Wrestling, and at one time they, Georgia Championship Wrestling. They pretty much bought out all the old school territories, used them as development, but since they owned them, it wasn't much better than the system they have now. And then they incorporated all of that into one central unit and call it NXT. And they were almost left with no outside talent pools. But then Ring of Honor come along and become a big thing. And some of their biggest stars come from there. CM Punk was a big deal there. Samoa Joe was a big deal there before TNA. Bobby Roode and Austin Aries have made the rounds there. I'm not sure if I said CM Punk, but he was. Daniel Bryan was. Sami Zayn was as El Generico. Seth Rollins was Tyler Black in Ring of Honor. Kevin Owens was Kevin Steen in Ring of Honor. These are all people who made major names for themselves there. So instead of making the old school mistake of treating it like a competition, they pluck people from Ring of Honor, but kind of give them the rub. Like, yeah, this guy was in Ring of Honor. You should check them out. They're pretty awesome. And they started doing it with New Japan, especially with the Bullet Club. They got Nakamura now, AJ Styles, Anderson and Gallows. From what I hear in recent times, they're hot on Kenny Omega. I've heard they kind of have eyes on the Young Bucks and have for a while. I can't think of his name, but there's another Japanese guy that they've been looking at. They're kind of, if you look at the first half of this decade, it was kind of like the Ring of Honor years. It's like they went from WCW and ECW to TNA in the first half of the last decade to kind of being like, or TNA, I'm sorry. They stole people from WCW and ECW in the second half of the 90s. They bought out ECW and WCW at the beginning of the 2000s and used that talent pool for that first half of the decade. Then they kind of went into the TNA phase the second half of the decade. And then Ring of Honor the first half of this decade. Now they're really getting hard on Japan, but, they still aren't afraid to pull from TNA and Ring of Honor. Those are still options. But the point being is with Ring of Honor and New Japan, as far as I know, they don't have any official deals with them. As far as money changing hands, but they still give them the rub whenever they debut a new star that recently wrestled in one of those promotions. They will mention their names. They give them the rub, to let people know, like, hey, these people exist. They give them some exposure. They're basically doing it the smart way. And then what Culture Pro Wrestling become a big thing overnight. Kind of put the UK scene on or the UK wrestling thing on the map, the scene on the map. All of a sudden now they're having had the UK Championship tournament or whatever they called it. And, they're still drawing off Mexico. They're going to let, Lucha Underground and AAA do their thing. It would seem that WWE is smarting up a lot when it comes to plucking talent, which is another thing I thought about, is that they're not completely robbing Japan and Ring of Honor. They play it smart. They get a few people every year and then give those promotions time to push new people to the top of the card and develop new talent. And then they come along a year or so later and they snatch up some more people. It's like it's an official, unofficial development system. And I really don't know what point I'm trying to make other than the fact that it seems to be working well. I like the fact that they can pull really great talents from these other promotions and make new stars, but can also in turn put eyes on those promotions. You know, I don't follow Japan and Ring of Honor like on a weekly basis. I don't watch all their shows and pay-per-views, but I keep up with them. And when I hear, oh, this person's doing good, this person's really getting over, oh, they've been having some really great matches, I tune in and I watch and I keep up with it for a while. And then basically WWE comes along, snatches up some talent, it gets a little boring for a while, and then some new people start making waves and you tune back in. It's a cycle and it's working and it's great. And it's great for the people that are the diehard fans, because it's like you could have somebody like Moose in Ring of Honor that for the longest time couldn't really not get over, but couldn't get any real attention or push. Then WWE comes along, snatches up some of their top guys. Now a guy like Moose is a god down there. You know what I mean? And then, you're always going to have your holdouts, like Young Bucks swear it's their decision. They haven't been in WWE up until this point. And you got guys like Samoa Joe who stayed with TNA and Ring of Honor and whatnot for the longest times. And even people like Austin Aries and Bobby Roode just recently finally come around. But I don't know. It's a great system. It seems to be working fine. You know, I hope it continues to work great. Only time will tell. That's all I can say. But so far, I'm really digging it. They seem to be doing the right thing. You know, as far as they're creative on their own product, that's a discussion for another day. But as far as how they're doing business around the world right now, they kind of seem to be coming into a new golden age, and it's kind of got me excited about the future and whatnot. I can't wait to see how much bigger Japan and Ring of Honor are going to get, and how they're going to do business with and interact with WWE and vice versa in the future. Because I wouldn't want to see either one have all their talents stolen away overnight and their promotions go to shit. But I do like seeing some of these super over faces continue to year after year to work their way into the WWE system and become the new school, over the old guard. Like Kenny Omega, I would love to see him in WWE. Doesn't have to be right away. It would be cool. But if it takes him another year or two to get there, and he wants to still do his thing and get reach new heights in Japan or wherever else, that's great. And I like the fact that they didn't automatically put Austin Aries into a main scene on any show, whether it was NXT or 205 Live or the main roster. The fact that he's doing commentary for 205 Live is awesome. But they always hint at the fact that at any time he could jump into the actual wrestling scene of that show and easily be the new Cruiserweight champion. And he could have easily been an NXT champion. And he could even have jumped right to the main roster and be on the mid card, fighting for the IC belt or the US title. But it's they're doing things smart. They're not oversaturating. Even if they acquire new talents, they're not thrusting them into the main event scene right away. They're giving other people chances to bud, Like, I like how they're building Baron Corbin. I always thought the guy had potential. You know, it's up to him ultimately how far he goes, but they're treating him right. Like, I really see a new era of WWE on the horizon, and this is just the beginning. But anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap it up for now. Like that's enough for today. I know it's been a while since I made the first set of videos. Maybe I'll try to do this a little more often. I just, been a lot going on. The nuclear fuck Holocaust tornado storm that tore through Georgia and most of the southeast. That was a big deal. I'm taking online courses to study for this A+ certification, trying to better my life. I try to stay busy around here. There's all kind of projects I can be working on. I've been working on my car because it's been needing work, cleaning up. Just busy, busy, busy. It just seems like I'm always doing something. So, hopefully, on top of everything else, I can try to start doing these a little more often. I've only had one guy comment on one video so far, but I've had a few views and whatnot. Hopefully, this channel starts to gain a little steam and traction and whatnot, and we'll see how it goes. But anyway, like I said, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Just like everybody else says, click, like, subscribe, whatnot. You got any ideas, any input, I'm always open. Negative or positive, feel free to comment. But anyway, like I say, see you next time.